Well, it's one of the most popular men's fragrance lines of the past century. It's also one of the most controversial. Stick with me tonight as I go over the Dior Sauvage line. This is going to be one you don't want to miss. Unless for some reason you already know about Dior Sauvage. Hey guys, welcome back to Real Scent Review. So I have a fragrance channel, and one thing I have never done is a Dior Sauvage line review. It almost seems like if you don't have a review comparing all of the members of the Dior Sauvage line, do you even really have a fragrance channel? And just as sure as I do have a fragrance channel, I am here tonight offering you guys my opinions on the Dior Sauvage fragrance line. So like I said in the introduction, it's one of the top selling men's fragrance lines of all time, especially this here, the Eau de Toilette version, the progenitor, the original Dior Sauvage. We also have the Eau de Parfum version, the Elixir version, and the small version of the Parfum, which is my least favorite, and I'm going to explain why later on in this video. So obviously, if we have a fragrance line that's one of the top selling of all time, there must be a lot of love for it. There must be a lot of demand, one would assume, naturally. And, look, the deal is there is a lot of demand. A lot of people out there love this line. Most people love this. If you smell somebody passing you in the street and they're wearing this, you're most likely going to have a positive reaction. Where this line becomes controversial is the fact that at one point, maybe not so much nowadays in 2024, I'm talking mostly 5 years ago or so, this Dior Sauvage was absolutely ubiquitous. You could smell it everywhere in the streets. Just every guy was wearing it. So a lot of people started to associate it with just ubiquity, with being common, with lack of originality or personality, for example. And I think that is where a lot of the hatred or frustration surrounding this fragrance line stems from. Also, there kind of exists an association between this fragrance line and chads and gym bros and womanizers because, well, some people think that some of the members of this fragrance line are a little bit synthetic, a little bit screechy, attention grabbing, and overtly masculine. But I'm going to get into that later on in this review. Now, total disclaimer here, you can say what you want about Dior Sauvage. I know it can be a little bit synthetic, some members of the line more so than others. It might not be the most complex fragrance line out there, but say what you want. I absolutely love this line. I love how they all smell. I find each one has certain characteristics that make it unique from the other members, although there are obviously some overarching similarities as well, which I will be touching on later in the review. So let's get right into this, shall we? I'm going to start with the Eau de Toilette, which came out in 2015. The main notes in this one are going to be bergamot, ambroxan, pepper, and a little bit of lavender. So this one here, this is where it all started, the Sauvage DNA, which, by the way, I think was pretty unique when it first came out. I know. Now we're in 2024. It's not 2015 anymore. There are a ton of clones of this out there. And also this has inspired countless other designer fragrances. Now in 2024, it's not the most unique scent profile. But back in 2015, man, I remember when this came out, this kind of took the world by storm. There was nothing else quite like it. It was really unique, very strong, very powerful, attention grabbing. Honestly, some people call this metallic and synthetic, and I can see where those people are coming from. The bergamot, especially in the opening, mixed with that black pepper, can give it a really sharp spiciness, kind of tickles the nose a little bit. The bergamot is really rindy. It's not a juicy bergamot. It's very rindy, kind of rough around the edges. It can be a little bit, off-putting, I guess, for the first few minutes after initial application. It's rough. It's strong. Like I said, it's not really smooth. It's kind of screechy, but I personally think it's done in a very nice way. Now, the dry down to this is all about the ambroxan and the lavender, but more so the ambroxan. So ambroxan is an aroma chemical made to mimic the smell of ambergris, which is whale vomit. So it has a really warm, salty, kind of sea breezy characteristic, and it's very prominent in this. A lot of people say that it smells like sweat. I don't necessarily agree with that, although it does have a distinct saltiness, a warmth, a kind of sea breeziness that, I guess, if you really twisted my arm, really twisted my arm, I might say that in the right circumstances, maybe on a super hot day with a lot of humidity, could be vaguely animalic. But other than that, I think for the vast majority of cases, it's a perfectly agreeable fragrance. Is it a little bit synthetic? Sure. Is it also very nice smelling in public if you catch wafts of it from somebody else who's walking past you, for example? Absolutely. I think the stuff smells great. The performance is great as well. As far as the main three fragrances, so this one, the Eau de Parfum and the Parfum, this one has the best performance. Moving on now to the Eau de Parfum. This one here is amazing. Out of the main three, so the Eau de Toilette, this one, and the Parfum, this one here is my favorite. We're going to get main notes of lavender, vanilla, ambroxan, and star anise. So yeah, we get that ambroxan that exists in the Eau de Toilette, but this one is more rounded because it has the addition of vanilla. That does not make the fragrance overly sweet. In fact, it's not really that sweet at all. The vanilla just gives it a slight kind of creaminess in the bottom here. It is detectable, but it never gets cloying or gourmandy at all. The vanilla is mixed in here very nicely. And there's also some anise, which is going to give it kind of like a powdery licorice, woody-ish characteristic in the background. It's not extremely prominent, but it is there. And it's the reason why I prefer this one over the Eau de Toilette and the Parfum. I think the stuff smells absolutely great. It's less screechy, it's more rounded, it's a little bit more mature than the Eau de Toilette, which is really screechy and attention grabbing and just loud and very substantial. This one here is not a weak fragrance by any means, but it's just been rounded out compared to the Eau de Toilette. The projection is a little bit softer, and also the longevity is not quite as good as the EDT, despite the fact that this is an Eau de Parfum concentration, supposedly. But the performance on this is still very good. There's no qualms about that whatsoever. Just compared to the EDT, it's not quite as loud, and I think that's a good thing. But man, especially because of that addition of the anise and the vanilla, this one here is a real head turner for me, and I absolutely love it. So the third one here is the Parfum, which actually I'm wearing. Been wearing it all day. This was a, what is this? Is it a 10 milliliter? No, fuck no. This is like a 3 milliliter sample, and I used it up today. I've also sampled it extensively in the past. So what does this smell like? So the main notes we're going to get in the Parfum are the following: bergamot, tonka bean, olibanum, and sandalwood. Now this one here is the farthest away from the Eau de Toilette, both in terms of scent profile and performance. So as far as the scent profile goes, this one is definitely way more rounded than the Eau de Toilette and even the Eau de Parfum. This one here does not have that screechy bergamot and ambroxan. It does have those two notes, yes, but it is not as screechy as the other two. It is toned down immensely, and the olibanum is going to give this a very resinous type of almost dry incense feeling with a touch of woodiness, which also might be coming from the sandalwood a little bit. I'm not entirely sure. And the addition of tonka bean is going to give it almost a nutty creaminess as well. This is the farthest removed from that traditional Sauvage DNA, while also retaining the same Sauvage DNA, which is really at the end of the day going to be coming from that bergamot and ambroxan. So between the Eau de Toilette, the Eau de Parfum, and this Parfum, this one is the most different out of the three, although you can definitely still tell it is a flanker of Dior Sauvage, because like I said, it does have that ambroxan, does have that bergamot, but they are not the centerpieces of attention in this fragrance. This one is sweetened a little bit because of that tonka bean, and there's also distinct resinous characteristics because of the olibanum. It is not smoky. It's not a smoky type of incense, but resinous, almost a little bit woody. In fact, in the dry down of this, I get something reminiscent of the dry down of Black Afghano by Nasamato. So what does that mean? That means there's a touch of like almost a plasticky woodiness that I'm just really not digging. I'm not a huge fan of this parfum. Sorry to all the people out there who like it, because I know this one does have a lot of fans. Just not for me. I don't like it. It's my least favorite one of the whole line. And now, last but certainly not least, is Elixir. Now this one here is honestly nothing like any of the other members of the line. It's really in its own category. I don't think this really should have been included in the Dior Sauvage line, but alas, it has been, and here we are, and I'm doing this comparison video. So the main notes in this one are going to be nutmeg, lavender, licorice, and sandalwood. This opens up very spicy because of that nutmeg. There's also some licorice in the top here, which is going to give it, you know, an absinthe kind of woody quality. Man, I love licorice. And the way that it's mixed with this nutmeg in the top is absolutely spectacular. It can be a little bit intense, very, very spicy in the opening here, but that's softened up throughout the lifespan because of that lavender, which is going to give it a warmth. And yes, lavender carries with it its own distinct kind of spicy warmth, but the lavender in this, I think, serves to soften up the spices and the licorice parts of this fragrance. It just combines to create a really, really, really nice smelling fragrance as far as I'm concerned. And in the bottom, there might be just a touch of sandalwood, I guess. Not really that prominent, but it adds a smooth kind of woodiness in the bottom, almost creaminess, for example. And to be honest with you guys, I find that this has just like a touch of smoke. I'm not really sure where that smoke could be coming from. I was thinking at one point that it could be oak moss, because the other thing about Sauvage Elixir is it really reminds me a lot of some classic aromatic fougères, mostly because of that lavender. And if my theory is true and there is a little bit of oak moss as well in the bottom, that could be responsible for that phantom smoke accord that I am detecting in this. So this one here, going to be the most powerful of the entire line. And remember, it doesn't really have anything to do with the other members of the line. This is a warm, spicy, almost aromatic fougere. It has a classic scent to it, very strong. The performance on this is insane. And it's not the same as any other member in the group. So like if for some reason, if there's someone out there who has not tried this fragrance line yet, be warned, Elixir is its own thing. It's in its own category for sure, which I think makes it unique. I really like this. The Elixir is my favorite of the whole line, followed by the Eau de Parfum, if I'm being honest with you. But yeah, this stuff here, unique, really, really, really nice. This one is darker, warmer, spicier, where the other three members of the line, if I had to just put it very simply, are more fresh. You know, this one doesn't really have any of that freshness. It's almost like Dior took classic aromatic fougères, added a ton of spice to them, and created Sauvage Elixir. It's an amazing fragrance. I know this one gets a lot of hate too, because I think people just like to hate on things that are popular, honestly. But it's popular for a reason. Although very strong, you might turn a lot of people off with this, especially if you wear it in close quarters scenarios like the office and stuff. Be warned, the performance is really crazy on this one. So I've given you my rundown of all the members of the line here. Which recommendations am I going to give you guys? Well, first of all, I'm going to start by saying that these three here, really, they share some DNA. You can tell that these three are related to one another in some way. Mostly the common notes that we're going to get throughout these three are the ambroxan and that bergamot. They're present in differing amounts in these three fragrances here. Which one do I recommend to you? That's an easy one. I would say the Eau de Parfum. Why? Because it's still relatively close to the EDP. But this is more rounded. It has that additional anise, which gives it a powdery, kind of licoricey, woody characteristic, and some nice smooth vanilla in the dry down. Takes away the screechy metallic characteristics that are present in this Eau de Toilette. This one here, out of the main three, is my favorite. It would be my recommendation to you. Again, if you're someone out there who has never purchased Sauvage before, any version of Sauvage, and you want something that's like close to the EDT, but just better in every way, in my opinion, go with the Eau de Parfum for sure. However, out of the entire line of the 4 Sauvage fragrances, Sauvage Elixir would be the one that I recommend over all the other ones, although I don't know if it's really a fair recommendation because this doesn't smell anything like the other 3 members of the line. In my personal opinion, this is its own thing. So if we're taking all of the Sauvages out there, Elixir would be my favorite. But if we're taking the 3, original Sauvages, Eau de Parfum would be my recommendation for sure. Nowadays, these fragrances are available on discounters, but it's like the discount price is barely any different from retail price. And I think the reason for that is because Dior nowadays allows some of their fragrances to be sold in the gray market. So like FragranceNet, Fragrance Buy, discount websites. They allow them to be sold by these gray market sellers. They just don't allow them to discount the price very much, if at all. So I'm not really sure. Maybe, I know at one point Dior was really tight. They had a tight control over the distribution. They did not allow their fragrances to be sold on, the gray market. Just like Chanel, I'm thinking the reason is because they don't want their brand image to be tarnished by, offering their fragrances at a discount, on cheap discount websites, for example. But then I think, Dior realized that, hey, if we just allow these gray market sellers to continue selling our products, but we don't allow them to, lower the price at all, we've essentially taken care of a lot of advertising and sales. So maybe that has something to do with it. Dior allows their products to be sold on discounters nowadays without actually being discounted, if that makes any sense to you. Anyway, guys, that's been my long overdue review comparison of the Dior Sauvage line, one of the most popular fragrance lines in male perfumery. I love it. What are your thoughts, guys? Which one is your favorite? Hope you've enjoyed the review. Until next time, keep it real.